Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And I lived through the VNG test that I had to take yesterday. I knew I would live, but I was just really scared. And it did turn out to be pretty terrible. There was a point where I did start crying because it was so uncomfortable. Um, so I thought I'd just tell you what happened, so I can have an episode that focuses just on this test so that people who have not taken the test before and may have been asked by their physician to take the test, that you might know what it's all about, like what it's like. So I wanted to talk about that and what the experience was like for me, and I'll end the episode by telling you what their findings were with me. So when I first went in to the test, the first part of it, they sit down and ask me questions about what are the symptoms that I experience. And I told them about my intolerance for movement and about the headaches and the sharp pains. I told them about the medication that I take, Emgality, which is the injection, and told them about what triggers my symptoms, like movement is a big deal. Moving my eyes is a big deal. I forgot to tell them that patterns make me a little nauseous, but coincidentally or not, that was something that was part of the test. So I was not prepared for that. It didn't matter. It was all the same. Once it got going, I was like, whatever, just finish it. So anyway, the first part of the test, I sat in a very comfortable recliner, sitting up, and they put two sensors in the middle of my forehead and a sensor on my left neck and on the right of my neck. And they put a earphone thing inside my ear. And for about 20 seconds, I would say, there's this thumping sound. To me, it sounded like a thump. When I looked at it online, they call it clicking. For me, it felt like a thump. And it's really light, gentle at first, for the first round. And then you do like 5 rounds. And each time they start it, it's more pronounced, the thump. So what I had to do was, as soon as I hear the thumping start in my right ear, I turn my head to the left and I hold it there until the thumping stops, and then I move my head straight. So then the thumping will start again, and you move your head, look to the left, and then when the thumping stops, you relax and look straight ahead. So that happened on each side. There were about 5 times or so. And then, so she did it on the left, and then she moved the earphone to the right and did the thumping on the left side. And in that case, I had to look to the right during that. And then, then we started a new part where they stuck the earphone back in my right ear again. And during this time, they had sensors right under my lower eyelids, like right on my lower eyelids. And when the thumping started, I had to keep my head facing forward, but move my eyes looking up. There was like a piece of tape on the wall, and I was supposed to look at that while the thumping was going on. and then looks forward when the thumping stopped. And I do that about 5 times, and each time the thumping is getting louder. And then they move it to the left side. And that was it. That's what they call a VMP test. I don't know what that stands for. You can Google it. VEM as in Mary, P. And so that's a very well-known test that they say is very, very accurate, is what my research showed, that it's very accurate testing. And they are, from what I understand, they're testing your reaction, I guess the muscle reaction to in your eyes to the thumping in your ears. So whatever, I don't know, but that's what I read. And then, so that's the end of the VMP test. It was really easy. Was it comfortable? I mean, no, you've got thumping in your ear, but it wasn't terribly loud. It didn't make me, I can't think of the word that I'm trying to say, but it didn't make me like, ew, or anything. It was just, it just happened, and then it was over. So the next part was the VNG test. And for this one, we went into a different room. And so I sat on this bed. It was like a bed like you'd find in a doctor's office. So I sat on the bed, and the bed was facing a big screen TV. And it was like right in front of the TV. It wasn't a distance across the room. Like I was sitting right in front of the TV. And they turned the lights out in the room and put these goggles on me. And if you Google VNG test goggles, you'll see what they put on my head. They look kind of like scuba goggles, but instead of having a screen or I can't think of these words today, but instead it has like this angled glass like coming out of the front of the goggles. So somehow they're videotaping and taking pictures of your eyes with this contraption on your head. So the first part of it, the TV screen was black, and there was a yellow filled in circle on the screen. And when they said go, the circle would disappear and then appear in a different part of the screen. So I was supposed to move my eyes to follow the circle. And then the next phase of it was the circle would go back and forth like a pong ball. And then it got faster and faster and faster. And I was supposed to just keep watching the ball go back and forth. Then after that, there was like a checkerboard on the screen. And that's when I was like, oh, I forgot to tell them I have a problem with this. It's not going to matter if I tell them or not. So so I was supposed to, it was like a blue and white checkerboard. The whole thing was blue and white checkers. And I had to focus on one of the white squares, and then the checkers start flying across the screen, and I'm supposed to count the white squares as they pass. Well, I don't think that it's possible, or it wasn't for me to count them. Maybe that's just a distraction for them to say to count them, but I mean, there was just no way. So I just kind of watched the checkerboard like continue to fly across the screen, and I just kept counting. And then when it was done, the screen went black, and I was supposed to stare forward. So that was uncomfortable. All this movement stuff was uncomfortable. Luckily, there wasn't anything that made me really just go, oh, like have an audible nausea feeling. That feeling happens when I go to the eye doctor and they ask me to look at the images when they merge together and then they merge away from each other. That actually makes me very ill when that happens. But I didn't have to do that, so that was positive. I didn't think about that. That was a positive experience or not experience. So after that, there was a whole section where they had to move my body in different positions on the bed. Like for one, I had to lay on the bed with my head hanging off the back of the bed, and the lady like held my head, and I was like looking to one side. And so I hang like that for like 5 seconds or something, and then they lift me up really fast. And then I do it on the other side and they lift me up really fast. That doesn't do anything to me, thankfully. That is not the kind of vertigo that I experience, thankfully, because that's pretty terrible. I felt sorry for the people who do have that room spinning vertigo. That must be really awful for this test. And I had to lay on my right side and stare straight forward. And then I had to do the same thing on my left side. And that's all I can think of. And then the worst part was in the end where they blow the air in your ears. So for much of the test, I had those goggles on, but they cover the goggles so that all I can see is black. And I'm supposed to like stare straight forward, stare to the left, stare to the right. And it's really difficult to be sure that that's where you're looking. But yeah, that was kind of strange. And then, so in the end is the air test. So I had the goggles on. They put the darkening shades on so I couldn't see anything. And then she stuck this, I don't know, little tube thing in my ear, and it blew warm air in my right ear. And I mean, it's like somebody puts, I'm trying to think of an analogy. It's like somebody, I guess, would be blowing in your ear. It might be harder than someone blowing in your ear. It's pretty hard blowing. But anyway, so the first part, they blew the warm air in my right ear. They did tell me in the beginning that I might feel the room spinning. Some people do, some people don't. That's all they told me. So they put the air in my ear for, I think it was 60 seconds. And the room did start spinning, but it was a very gentle spin. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just like, okay. It was almost like you're in one of those space astrology rooms and like the stars are spinning. Like it was really slow. That's what I was feeling like. So then they take the darkening goggles off, and I relax until the room stops spinning. And then they put the goggles back on and blew warm air in my left ear. Well, that was terrible. It was terrible. I just started crying. It hurt. It was loud. And the room was spinning, like spinning, like woo, like spinning. And you have to sit there for 60 seconds. I was white knuckling the bed. I was holding on to the bed and I was just crying. And she was just kept telling me to breathe. And then it was over. And so I kept like starting to cry again. I think it was just because going through all these tests can get exhausting. So it was just another one of those tests that I was like feeling sorry for myself that I had to be in that position. But it did hurt. I don't know why it hurt, because when I looked online, it said they don't usually hurt. So whatever, it was uncomfortable, it hurt, and the room was spinning. but it was only 60 seconds long. So it took a while for the room to stop spinning, and they tried to distract me. That wasn't helping. And finally, I was back to normal. Okay, so that's just the warm air. Then you have to do the cool air. So they do it to my right ear again. There was even less of a reaction with the cool air in my right ear. Then they did the cool air in my left ear, and I was prepared to just be miserable. And it wasn't miserable. There wasn't a lot of reaction with that. So that was it. That was the end of the test. And what they concluded was, I was sure that what happened with my left ear, that was the problem. Like, oh, they found the problem, you know. Well, what happened in my left ear, that was considered normal. The problem was my right ear, because my right ear, there was no reaction, hardly at all. So that was a sign to them of, with that lack of reaction and some indications from the VEMP test earlier, they said that the diagnosis is probably vestibular neuritis, which is inflammation of the vestibular nerve. So I looked this up today because I'm like, how is it possible that I have an inflamed vestibular nerve? And this all started on the exact day that I had the stroke. You know, I mean, come on. I'm not buying it. So I looked up what the correlation is between stroke and vestibular neuritis. And people can have strokes in their ears. Well, I had an ear MRI and everything, and they didn't find anything. I said to the Google machine, can you have a stroke in your parietal, I don't know how you say it, parietal lobe? Can you have a stroke in your parietal lobe? That's what we're going to call it, which is the upper left lobe is where I had my stroke. Can you have a stroke there and end up with vestibular neuritis? No, there's no correlation between the two. But there is, it seems like there's a correlation between having a stroke in that lobe and having vestibular dysfunction. So I looked up misdiagnosis for vestibular neuritis, and it said people that it can be misdiagnosed for stroke symptoms. Like it can, like you can be diagnosed for vestibular neuritis when really it's stroke symptoms. So what I think, this is my personal diagnosis of myself, you know, that's what we do. I think that it is my stroke impacted my vestibular system, and they were finally able to see exactly, I guess, find where the weakness is. And the weakness in my vestibular system is on my right side. And the right, they said it's 61% less sensitive than my right. So when I looked that up, the Google machine told me that when we have strokes on our left side, it affects stuff on our right side of our body. So it could make sense. So I don't know. The next step now is to go back to the neuro-otologist and just have his 2 cents about what he thinks is going on. And then I'll go back to the stroke specialist again and get her 2 cents about what's going on. When I looked at like, what do they do for vestibular neuritis? Well, it sounds like it's medication and vestibular therapy, which you all know I've done both of those and I'm kind of sick of it. And there was something about vestibular neuritis goes away in a few weeks or something like that. So I feel like I'm going to be right back where I started and like after I see these doctors, but it's fine. I think that I feel very much like celebrating the fact that they saw in a test what I've been communicating, that I have a vestibular dysfunction. Whether it's from my stroke or so-called vestibular neuritis, um, I really think it's from the stroke. I mean, I don't know how it can't be. That's when it all started. So either way, there's not much that they can do. It's just vestibular therapy. So that's it. That's the experience. And I think that it was very much worth it. It was not as terrible as I was ready for it to be, except for the air in my ear. And I was definitely uncomfortable when they were doing all of the stuff on the TV, but I'm so used to that it doesn't scare me anymore. So while it was happening, I was okay. I was exhausted and frustrated that I had to do it, but I think that that's okay. Just being gentle with myself. That's okay. I'm human. It's okay to not like what I'm doing, but it's making sure that I do the next right thing. And the next right thing for my medical journey was to get the VNG test and the VEMP test. So that's what I've done. So I'm checking it off. So that was my experience. And I did have some notes on willingness today. And I also heard a term that I hadn't heard before, which is called living inside out. And I was just thinking of that Inside Out movie. Um, so I may cover that in a different episode. I think I just wanted to totally focus on the VNG test today in case anybody can find this video and get a little rundown of what it's like. If you need to take a VNG test or a VEMP test and you're nervous, let yourself be nervous. It's fine. All you got to do is walk in there and get it done, and then it'll be over. And I have to say, I woke up feeling very happy because it's in the rearview mirror now. So that's that. Thanks for listening today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.